Hello and welcome to the Virtual Village Hall, and the first in a series of sessions where I'm going to be showing you how to use air dry clay, giving you some ideas, some projects that you can use either for yourself or for gifts for family and friends. So first disclaimer, I'm not a ceramicist, I'm a print artist. So unsurprisingly, some of the elements that I'm going to show you do have print involved in them, and also lots of natural elements. In today's session, the first one, I'm going to show you how to make these vase toppers. You might want to call them vase toppers, stem holders, also known as flower frogs. They're perfect for just single stems to give some nature to your surrounding, especially as we go into the dark winter months. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop you down, I'll go through what you need and we'll get started. So to start with, you're going to need air dry clay. This comes in different colours. You can get it in terracotta, black or white. I'm going to be using the white one because I'm going to be wanting to give it a slight kind of tinted glaze. If you're using the black or the terracotta, the glazes won't show up. So you might just want to varnish them, which I'll talk about a bit later. You'll need a nice flat surface. I'm going to be using an acrylic sheet. Also make sure that the surface is smooth. And you need to use a rolling pin. You'll probably need something to cut the clay, so have a sharp knife to hand. Then you're going to need some natural elements. I like to use leaves, seed heads, berries, or you can also use dried grasses, such as that, or even feathers to make these prints. Once we've printed, we need to cut our frogs. So I'm going to be using cookie cutters or scone cutters, whatever you like to call them. The way you work out what size you need is just by getting the vase or the jar that you're going to be using, and then just selecting one that is just slightly bigger. Because they've got a curve to them, we need to make sure that they are slightly bigger. So that's the one that I'm going to select for today. I believe, if I quickly look at the top, it is this is the 9 centimetre or 3.5 inch. So just to get you an idea of the one that I'll be making today. Once we've printed and we've cut our clay, you're going to need to put these holes in it for the stems, and I just use something as simple as the end of a paintbrush. I've got a few various sizes, so I can make various size holes so that I can put any sorts of stems, from large stems to really small stems, but entirely up to you. You might like to just have one hole, just a couple, large, small. It really is just up to you what you'd like to use. So once we have cut, printed and put holes in, you're going to need to let this dry. Now you don't want it to dry flat. I mean, you could actually let it dry flat, but I quite like to have a curve to mine. So I'm going to be using this darning mushroom. As you can see, I don't really use it for darning. I tend to use it more for printing. But as long as it's something with a nice smooth round surface. So for example, that could be like a tennis ball, in which case you'll also need some cling film to make sure so put the cling film over to make sure the clay doesn't stick during the drying process. And if you have got one of these, then you can take the top off. So you can just have it flat, so you don't have to sort of weirdly position it to keep the clay dry. And that drying is going to take about 3 days, 2 to 3 days, sort of depending on the atmosphere in your house. Then finally, once that's dry, you're going to want to varnish it to make it watertight. Now you can use an oil-based varnish, so it's nice and glossy. You've got a gloss finish to it, in which case you're going to need to, if you want to tint it, then you're going to need oil-based paints. I'm going to be using a water-based varnish. Just got it here. This is just sort of a bog standard one. There you go. And I've gone for a clear satin, so I've not got a gloss to this. And if you want it tinted, down there. If you want it tinted, then just some acrylic. And you need so little of this acrylic. You know, you don't just use what you've got at home. Don't worry about buying new acrylic. You need the tiniest amount. And also you'll need some paintbrushes to paint that acrylic on. So I think that's everything. It feels like there's quite a lot of stuff that you need for it, but the actual making, I promise you, is far more simple. Let's get started. I've got my clay and I'm just going to cut a chunk off. Now the amount you take off will depend on the size of flower frog that you want to make. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this as well. You could roll out a piece of clay almost like you're rolling out pastry, imprint it with the different flowers and leaves and seed heads, and then again, like you're cutting biscuits or scones, cut multiples of them, just making sure that you've got a nice little maybe composition of leaves in each cut. Or you can, if you've got a little bit more time, you can do them individually. So I'm going to show you individually today because we've got a little bit more time and I'm not making lots of these. But if you are making them for gifts, that's a great way to do it. So I'm going to roll the clay out. I wouldn't go any thicker than 5 millimeters. So that's about 2/8 of an inch, I believe. If someone can correct me, please do. I always get my metrics and imperials mixed up. So 5 millimeters, 2/8 of an inch or thinner. Just remember that the thinner you go, the more delicate it will be. So that's rolled out and I know that it's going to make I've rolled out enough so that I can cut with my cookie cutter. Then I want to add my natural elements. So I've got some, I went out into the garden this morning, picked some wet foliage, which is now dry. So I've got some button fern, which is very delicate. You might want to add some other leaves in there as well. So you'll notice that this is going over the size of my cutter, but I'd like to include some of these elements too. If you're thinking, oh, I've got some air dry clay in the cupboard, I haven't used that for a long time, and you go to the cupboard and find that your air dry clay is hard, no fear, don't throw it away. Air dry clay can be revived. All you need to do is just cut it up into chunks, soak it for about 24 hours just in a container of water, and then the next day drain the water off and then bring all the clay back together again and it will be ready to use. So remember, if your clay is very dry, then you can reuse it. And I'm just going to add a few more bits here. I've got some ivy berries. The deeper the imprints, so the kind of the more solid the elements that you're using, the more area there is for the glaze to go into. So if you want something very delicate, go for just leaves, and you'll see that I've put them vein side down, so you're getting a really good print from that. Or if you want all the glaze to almost sit into the recesses, then use something really solid. But they're so quick to make. I know I'm rambling on a bit, but I would have made this by now if I wasn't. They're so quick to make. You can do a few trials and really just go for what you like best. So with my arrangement done, I'm just going to take a few of those berries off. That's not going to sit flat. There we are. With my arrangement done, I'm just going to take another piece of perspex. So you could either just use your fingers to, if you haven't got one of just sort of a piece of acrylic or perspex, use your fingers to make the imprints. You could also very carefully use the rolling pin to go over it again. but this one's quite nice as well. So I use I'm going to start by doing the ivy first, and then I'm just going to take that away. Place the acrylic on top, and then just with your fingers go over the top, and that will mean you won't end up with any fingerprints, any indents. It'll be a nice even print. Okay, I'm happy with that. Carefully remove the leaves, and if any do get stuck, then you can just use a sharp pencil or a cocktail stick just to remove those. I'm just going to add a few more with this one because it went a bit lopsided as I printed it. Let's do one more, make it a bit more full. There we go. So take your cutter, and then I'm just going to find the bit that I like the most. Oh, I like that bit and I like that bit, but I haven't got room for both, so I'm going to have to make a decision. I think I'm going to cut that bit. But if there was a particular bit you really did like, you could always make a smaller one. So I just take my smaller cutter and cut that one there. All the excess clay can be removed, and that can be used again. So I'm just going to put it with the rest of the clay so it doesn't dry out. Carefully remove it from the smooth surface. And then I've got my darning mushroom. At this point, if you're using something that isn't smooth, then just put a piece of cling film between what you're using and the piece of clay. I'm not going to shape it too much yet because I'm going to need to put my holes in. So put your holes wherever you like. You can put them randomly, or you might like to put them in a sequence. I don't know why, but I always have to seem to do one right in the middle. And I'll just do a few large ones around the outside. It's getting in the way. Let's keep it flat for the moment. And then you lift it up and make sure those holes go right the way through. And just take off some of the excess clay at the back. Because when you lay that down to dry, that clay will just end up filling those holes again. Then we'll do some smaller holes. I've got smaller stemmed plants. Again, make sure the holes go right the way through. Oh, missed one. And just remove the excess. If you wanted to make the back very neat, then all you need to do is get some water, just wet your finger and just go around each hole, just smoothing it down, and that will make your back nice and neat as well. So put it over your mould, whatever you're using, just very gently firm it down. I say firm is probably the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean. Just make sure it makes that shape, because you don't want to be too firm, because you don't want to obliterate any of the beautiful delicate leaves that you've printed. And then that can just be left. Check the manufacturer's instructions on your air dry clay. Mine normally takes sort of 2 to 3 days to dry completely, and it will also depend on how thick you've rolled your clay out. When that is dry, it's time, if you like, to add colour tint to it. You will definitely need to varnish it, unless you're using it for dried flowers. You'll definitely need to varnish this to make it watertight. So use a good quality varnish. This is one that I made earlier. It's nice and dry now. And I'm just going to mix up some varnish and also some acrylic tint. So put my varnish in the pot. Don't need too much, it's possibly a bit more than I actually need. And you can see I've got a tiny bit of acrylic paint just here on the top of this lid. And I'm going to take, if you see, just that much just to start with, because a little goes a long way. You can see already that's really coloured that varnish. And I don't think I'm actually going to use any more than that. If I wanted to make a greeny colour, then I'll add a little bit of blue. But again, very, very little. And then just paint the varnish on. Make sure that you go into the holes as well, because they're going to need to be coated. And I'm going to do the sides as well. And I will need to leave this to dry probably for about a day. And then once that's dry, I'll need to do the underneath as well. So there you have your flower frogs ready for their flowers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that's inspired you to either look in your cupboards for air dry clay, or they can be picked up very reasonably from craft shops or on the internet. Typically one this size, which I think is about a kilo, just double check. I can't see it on here. I think it's a kilo. It costs between about £4 and £5, so it's not actually a bad investment, and you can make loads and loads and loads of these flower frogs from them as presents or for yourself. But don't use it all up this week, because next week, same time, 11 AM next Thursday, I'm going to share another little project that you can do, and this is going to be these little ceramic keepsakes. So here we are. So again, some printing, and we're going to be using gold leaf this time. So make sure you check out the virtual village hall next Thursday, 11 AM for then. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care. Bye.